This week, we've seen slithering silence, fold out fanaticism, and overheating obstacles. Let's dive right into what's on the pull list. This week, we're kicking things off with Absolute Superman number 18, written by Jason Aaron with artwork by Rafa Sandoval. This was a really big world building kind of issue here. We've kind of like started off this new arc and we see an established Kal-El living in Smallville, kind of being one with the people. I kind of feel like he's taking on those Smallville aspects more than we've seen in the past, right? He's kind of having that farm, that small town farm aesthetic that's going on with him. But really what's going on in this issue is that we've seen the after effects of everything that's taken place in the prior issues and, kind of like arcs in the series. We've seen the after effects of what's happened now that Ra's al Ghul has been in prison, and the effects of having a Kal-El who kind of like was concerned about rehabilitation for him more than anything. On top of that, we're also seeing something that kind of was teased a little bit in the past when we saw the origin of Hawkman. We also kind of saw inklings of what the Shazam or the Black Adam type characters were going to be. Well, now we get the introduction of them in this issue and a little bit of their backstory as well. This was a solid issue. I really like the reintroduction of Rafa Sandoval being the artist again. Love his style, completely different than what we saw from Juan Ferreira here, but it's great to see him back and bringing those kind of classic comic book feels here. Absolute Superman, again, it's like the best world building series from the Absolute Universe. Next up, we have Batman number 8, written by Matt Fraction with artwork by Ryan Sook. So it seems like DC may have a trend here because I was just talking about Absolute Superman being world building. Well, yeah, this kind of felt like exactly what they were doing in Batman as well. Now, this is the first issue that we don't have Jorge Jimenez on the artwork, and I have to say, it definitely had an effect for me. All of the energy, even in these softer and quieter moments, was completely gone from this issue, which was kind of a bummer, but albeit it was kind of a slower issue in itself altogether anyway. We're kind of looking at what Gotham is dealing with right now and what the ramifications are now that Pamela Isley is the mayor, and how her companionship with Vandal Savage, albeit kind of like a headbutting companionship, how that's going to affect Batman and how they're going to be working together in some facets, maybe working against each other in some facets. It was very Batman light, and it kind of didn't work for me. This is the first issue where I was like, that's kind of a head scratcher. It felt like a filler issue in a series that hasn't felt that way in the past here. Not to say it was bad, but it definitely brought the energy way down for me. So Batman number 8, just okay this week. All right, let's talk Bizarro Year None number 1, written by Kevin Smith and Eric Carrasco with artwork by Nick Pitara. So this was really interesting because it's kind of sort of trying to tell maybe an origin story of the Bizarro character, but it doesn't feel like an origin story whatsoever. We're getting this look into the character as he's kind of influencing other people and having that influence put upon him as well, as really the main characters in this issue kind of almost completely revolve around employees of the Daily Planet, particularly Perry White and Jimmy Olsen, as they come into contact with the Bizarro kind of universe, right? And see his influence as he tries to be maybe more Superman-esque than Bizarro himself. I have to say, though, while the writing was okay, it was snappy and it was fun, Nick Pitara's artwork was absolutely the reason you need to pick this up, though. It is brilliant. The artwork is so textured and so detailed. It's almost like a Jeff Darrow kind of approach on here, albeit much more restrained, but the detail very high level in each and every panel that you get. Bizarro Year None, it was interesting. I'm not sure if it's something that I would have picked up if it weren't for Nick Pitara's artwork, but it's there, so I guess I'll be there too. Next up, we have Briar Night Terrors number 4, written by Christopher Cantwell with artwork by Alex Linz. So we've come to the culmination, the end point of not only Briar Night Terrors, but the entirety of the Briar storyline that Chris Cantwell has put out via Boom. And I gotta say, it really did it for me. It just worked like so well, man. It tied every loose end together here in a really satisfying way, as we have Briar, our Sleeping Beauty stand-in type character, not even a stand-in really, it just truly is Sleeping Beauty, as she comes head to head basically with her fairy godmother, who's the villain in this storyline, and also happens to be her very real mother in this world. A lot of the books that we read here, specifically comic books, it's all about beginnings and ends. Did you finish strong? Did you start strong? That colors a lot of the opinion of the story. And while this series may have had some issues that were a little bit slower, or issues where it was all about the character development and we didn't get a lot of plot movement, they ended really spectacularly. I love the way that they toy with the idea of the fairy tale aspect of it, and just the whole premise of the Sleeping Beauty story too, as her in this world, her bloodline really kind of like dictates maybe possibly a curse upon the world, or maybe a rebirth of this world. I have to say, like I said, they ended this in a really stupendous fashion, and it makes me go back and appreciate the prior issues even more. Briar Night Terrors really surprised me in a great way. All right, we have the return of the Man Without Fear, so let's talk about Daredevil #1, written by Stephanie Phillips with artwork by Lee Garbitz. So this is definitely foundation laying. We're trying to make sure that new readers can kind of jump onto this title, get a firm understanding of who the character of Matt Murdock is, the world that is Hell's Kitchen, and everything that surrounds Daredevil's, kind of like inner workings. And from that perspective, I think this was a really effective story. We get a lot of great action with Daredevil as he takes on some petty street crime. We get Matt Murdock as he's taken on this new profession as a law professor. And we get to see a lot of the character dynamics, because if you know anything about Matt Murdock, he's a ladies' man a little bit. And we get to see the inklings of some of that stuff to kind of like get pushed forward a little bit. Now, that's not to say that this was a perfect #1. I think that while it got people caught up with the character and what this new storyline is going to tell, I think there was a little bit of clunkiness with the dialogue, particularly with one of the new characters that is introduced in this issue. This detective that seems like he is really good at his job, but maybe really bad at working with people. But maybe that's supposed to be baked in there. Time will tell on that. We also get the introduction of a new villain within this world here, Omen. And there's some cool threads that I think that they could play with here. His garb definitely looks very ninja-esque, so maybe there's a tie-in to the hand there. We'll see, but in regards to Daredevil #1s, I think that this did everything I needed it to. Now, what comes from here is whether this is going to be a great run or not. All right, let's talk G.I. Joe Silent Missions Baroness #1, written by Declan Shelvey with artwork by Joel Jones. So I put written in parentheses because this is one of those silent issues. We had a batch of them with the heroic characters of G.I. Joe. Now we're doing the villainous characters, and we're going to kick things off with Baroness. So it's really plotted out by Declan and Joel together with Joel Jones on artwork. And from that perspective, I think that this is every bit as effective as the heroic versions were. So we get Baroness going on this mission, super spy kind of stuff, taking out some people, some guards, so that she can infiltrate this place and get on with her mission. It's really Joel Jones's artwork that is the star here, as it should be with the silent issues, and it works out fairly well. I have to say though, while I was excited to see Joel Jones on artwork here, it was the color work that was a little bit different than what I've seen from her in the past. I feel like more often than not, I've seen a very traditional color palette be used, or a traditional color approach be used with her art. And this one had a much more digitally painterly approach to it. And I don't know how I feel about it. It worked for me, don't get me wrong, but I'm not sure if I would have preferred seeing the other one, particularly with a G.I. Joe title. Something about that just rings, I don't know, old school to me, particularly with G.I. Joe, a real American hero. So this issue worked. It was just as much fun, and I'm definitely going to be along for all of these silent issues here. But it put together with all of the other silent issues, I don't think it necessarily reaches like the peak like some of the other ones did. Next up, we have Kaya #34, written and drawn by Wes Craig. This was an interesting issue because we've really become accustomed to having the adventurous issues with Kaya and Jin together, right? And everything else where they're separated have been those in-betweener issues where, there's one adventure that's happening, but it's usually in the past or in the future. And it just gives kind of like a taste of other things that are going on within this world. But this is definitely right there within the storyline, pushing the narrative forward, but we have our heroes separated. And man, it sucked. It sucked not in a way that the issue was bad though, but it sucked not seeing our heroes together, because that's kind of the purpose of this issue. You're supposed to feel that longing for these characters being separated. And you see that with each one of these individual characters as well, as Kaya is now kind of developing like what will I assume be her band of like thieves that she's working for that we've seen in the other future issues. And we see Jin still with Razel, but now he's starting to question Razel's motives and asking, hey, what is your plan? I've trusted you, I've put my faith in you this entire time. Dude, you got to give me something that's going to let me know that we're on the right path. And I'm not so sure that he gets that. Wes Craig, the imagery in this book is fantastic too. It kicks things off with that giant dragon too, that is like this looming, ever threatening presence in this latter arcs of this book here. So we're starting to develop that even more, and it's becoming even more and more threatening now, as there's maybe a level of influence over this dragon that we didn't know previously. Kai is awesome. You guys already know I love this book here. This issue didn't change that whatsoever. Hype level still very high. We're getting closer and closer to the end of this series here. I'm going to cherish every single issue, this one in particular. All right, let's talk about maybe the hardest book to review this week, because it's Mad About DC #1, written and drawn by a plethora of individuals here that Chip Zdarsky reined in. So this isn't a comic necessarily, it's a Mad magazine in comic form, but all specifically about DC Comics. And some of it really works really well. Some of it, not so much though. I like that it was very in tune to what Mad Magazine used to be. I used to love Mad Magazine. In fact, it's so funny. I would always go to the grocery store to the magazine aisles, and I would find the Mad Magazine, and I'd go right to the back page, and I would fold that sucker up and ruin that back cover. And I'm pretty sure I never actually bought a copy of Mad Magazine. I just wanted to see what that fold out was. This one, I don't know if it was effective as I wanted it to be. There's a couple stories, particularly the Jim Zub one, which I thought was really, really funny and really worked well. There's some others, though, that kind of took pokes and jabs, not at the industry itself, but actually to some of the things that, were reflective of the people that read these comics, like us. And it didn't turn the mirror on itself so much. So there were some aspects here that did work, didn't work. Overall, super fun. But, was it something that I'm going to kind of keep in my collection forever and ever? Well, maybe not. All right, let's talk Poison Ivy #43, written by G. Willow Wilson with artwork by Jaime Infante. So this one was interesting, right? And I feel like this is the same thing I was talking about with Batman, because we're seeing Pamela Isley's influence over Gotham City, being that she's the mayor, more and more so. And I feel like I'm going to echo a lot of things, because in this issue, we still see some of the ramifications of her working with Vandal Savage and his initiative to take down Batman, because being a vigilante isn't a lawful thing to do, but he has ulterior motives here as well. But Poison Ivy, she's got her own motives, right? She's trying to stay in power to make sure that basically all of the threats that were put against her can be stopped, right? She knows that she needs to be in power to stop the other powers from coming against her. What really still works well here, because of G. Willow Wilson, is the character interactions, though. We still get a lot of great stuff here with Janet from HR. I love her still continuing to work with Pamela. But this one really hit hard with Pamela and Harley Quinn's relationship, and how Poison Ivy is now looking at this new role for herself in a very serious matter. And what's not so serious? Maybe a character who's kind of portrayed herself to be a clown. So it was really heartbreaking in some aspects here. But again, that's kind of the whole point of this. Pamela Isley is not a well put together person, individual, but maybe she's learning to be. But this is definitely something that she's going to have to learn the lessons of the things that she's doing, because right now she's not acting in anyone's best interest but her own. Next up, we have Speed Racer #7, written by David Papos with artwork by David Tinto. I need to start with the artwork here from Tinto, because I have to say, while I've praised it in the past, and while it definitely really did the trick for me in the earlier issues of this run, I feel like something totally clicked with this issue, man. And Tinto's artwork was just so dialed in, man. I loved everything that was happening in this issue. The premise behind this is that Speed just lost basically for the first time, and he lost hard because the bravado and the youthful exuberance that he kind of brought to the racetrack, it didn't quite work for him when he came up against a person who, quite frankly, just had the better mechanics behind him, right? The car was driving just better. But it's about the driver and not the car itself. And Speed's dad is the one that helps him kind of realize this, gives him some new techniques. And I love kind of seeing that these are real racing techniques that they're dialing into the storyline here. It's kind of one of those like Days of Thunder kind of things. Rubbin's racing, right? He uses physics to kind of develop a new maneuver that's going to allow him to beat this car, which through and through should be faster. All the while, too, the person who's driving this car has beef, serious beef with the whole racer family, right? Has beef against Pops and Speed now. But maybe there's more to the story here and there's more character development to come down the pipeline. I loved this issue. It was arguably one of my favorite Speed Racer issues that has come out so far, and I feel like this was a big jump forward for both the character motivations and the plot and the narrative as well. So Speed Racer number 7, great time to jump onto this. Go get number 6 and 7, great companion pieces for this 2-issue arc, and it's going to allow you to jump right in and kind of see where they're going from here. And with my runner-up book of the week, let's talk The Sacrificers, number 20, written by Rick Remender with artwork by Andre Lima Araujo. This is a heartbreaking issue, which is turning into a heartbreaking ending to a heartbreaking story. This is all about Pigeon, our main character, coming to the realization that the old ways didn't work, but also his new ways, the ways that he has fought his entire life to establish. Well, guess what? They don't work either. And what's happening now is that his life has been so influenced by being a sacrifice that was meant to be made to the gods. He's using that to color every future decision that he's made here, up into including him being an old man and not willing to sacrifice anything for the well being of the world itself. Now that he's kind of taken on the role that the gods did and just trying to make sure everything is working. And at this point, nothing is working. And his younger sister, who was almost sacrificed herself, she's the instrument that is tearing everything down, including, the thing that very well could have saved his wife, Saluna, the daughter of one of the gods. This is the penultimate issue. It did everything to set up for an epic finale. The artwork was stupendous, and it didn't offer not even a glimmer of hope for this world. In fact, by the end of this issue, you're looking at this going, oh no, there is no way that anyone is walking away from this under any good terms whatsoever. But that also does get me excited here because in Rick Remender fashion, he has a way of crafting an end to a story that brings you to a place maybe you didn't expect but was so incredibly well earned. I'm ready for that ending. This issue sets it up. Sacrificers number 20 was excellent. And with my top comic of the week, we're going to talk not a comic necessarily, but a magazine with The Savage Sword of Conan number 13, primarily written by Roy Thomas with artwork by Roberto Della Torre. This was such a fun issue. This was just classic Conan through and through. And of course it was. It totally makes sense because we have Roy Thomas writing it, a classic Conan writer, coming back to the book and telling a tale that just totally worked for me. On top of that, Roberto Della Torre, who was the original artist on the very first arc of the Conan, the Barbarian Proper series from Titan, coming back and bringing all that classic Conan energy again, with his style being very, very reminiscent to John Buscema, who kind of defined the look and feel of Conan for a wide swath of time. The story is all about Conan going on with this adventure, kind of reluctantly teaming up with another thief and, being on the run basically, right? They're both on a job together. They realize that the prize isn't there. So now this entire kingdom is after them. And they come across, another band of thieves and a woman who they end up saving, but also she then backstabs them. So they're after her, and everything just keeps kind of like snowballing one after another, up until the point where now Conan is a prisoner within the town where this woman originally came from, has to try to right the wrongs there. And, Well, I'll leave the ending open ended here because I want you to read this and experience it for yourself. But what I have to say is, you get the newsprint of that magazine that totally fits with the older aesthetic of the storyline and the artwork here. Everything feels classic, everything feels bold, everything feels Conan. And that's what made this absolutely worthy of Top Comic of the Week. We had so many excellent comics that came out this week. In particular, that Daredevil #1, that had me excited. On top of that, we had the Daredevil Born Again Season 2 premiere that just hit a couple weeks ago. I definitely recommend you check out the Ink and Insights crew as we did our breakdown on Daredevil Born Again, the Miller and Mazzucchelli epic run. I think it's one of the best storylines of all time within comics. Make sure you check out our breakdown right here in the link.